able to understand the criminal justice system better, and we also wanted to provide an actual method that trains people to help people understand what they're seeing in court, to help people walk with individuals better. Because one of the biggest things that happens, whether you're living a life of poor choices or you made a mistake and you find yourself in court, you don't stop being a person because you messed up, and you don't stop needing your community when you mess up. Couple, in fact, you need more. That's right, amen. But in that, to root out some of the ways that we've done criminal justice, done pretrial court in the past, it means that we have to have eyes on. Oh, thank you. At some point, I need to say thanks, Joe. At some point, we would need to have community members understand that a judge is an elected official. A prosecutor is an elected official, no different from the city council person or the mayor or the governor. They represent our interest in the criminal justice space. If we are continuing to see crime, poor choices, and the community as a whole not getting certain results out of the tax dollars that we spend on that, then just like we talk to elected officials about potholes in streets and garbage being picked up, we need to be talking to elected officials about, wait, what's going on with this criminal justice mechanism that's not producing in a way that we keep being told it's going to? Those elected officials are in that building across the street, and there's almost no particular structured mechanism to bring people into that. And so that was our thinking around that. But also, we all want to be safe. We all want to be free of that fear that goes along with somebody else making poor choices. And so, we drive right into that. Some people make stupid choices. Sometimes a lot of people make bad mistakes, and that's a real thing. But addressing that in a way that has the community a part of it and not separate from it means that we get a real benefit from the process that the person goes through, as well as we get to take, it as a win when that person is on the tail end of that, and they're doled out their punishment, whether that punishment be 100 hours of community service or 2, whether it be a way to make a business whole again that you broke the window at, or a car that you stole, and you helped to make that person whole. That person or business that was wronged, I can promise you, want something different than just that person going to prison for a year, 2 years, 3 years. They want some questions answered, which is a restorative process, and they probably also want the system to invest in that person in a way to make sure that they don't do that again. How we go about in language and in action helping the court system to push for that kind of result is to understand it better. And currently, most people understand court like this much. Questions? Yes. Yes, Joe.
Greg Petro does the court observation, right? And he does it in, who is in charge of the participatory process? That's more my age.
Right. So the participatory defense piece of the puzzle was picked up and is spearheaded by Patton Law Office. Lawyer Patton, David Patton, and his wife Tamara. They carry that particular piece of the puzzle. Deacon Greg Petro and I are the co-chairs of the Transformational Justice Task Force, which houses the court observer training. And yeah, Petro is the boots on the ground person to really make it happen. And, we talk, we strategize, we do a lot of different things together, but Petro is definitely the go-to person. And you can get in touch with myself to get in touch with Deacon Petro to get you plugged in, Naoki. You can also call directly to Racine Interfaith Coalition, and ask for the community organizer over there, which is Ree, and he'll get you connected. That's not a problem. So yeah, the patent law office is the go-to person or go-to entity for that particular piece of the puzzle. And it is interesting to watch a person with supports have that come to Jesus moment in court. When they say, I messed up, I get it, and I get that that both has consequences to it, and I also want to be a part of that to make it right. Like, that's powerful stuff. We would hope that as a community, the court system across the street is producing that kind of result, or at least allowing for that kind of result to be a constant within the court system. And I think, these three systems working together, these three pieces working together, can help drive that kind of conversation to produce that kind of result. Yes, question in the back? Sure. Sure. Man, that's a big one. But I'll try to summarize that a bit. Yes. So we have a lot of different neighborhoods, a lot of different small subdivisions within Racine City, Racine County, that are carved up on the map. You can see that there are more rentals there than owners. You can see that there are more police calls to this area than some of the other areas. And a few decades ago, that was carved up in that way, deliberately so. People who are struggling tend to make interesting and sometimes poor choices in order to get by. I tell people all the time, before I was before I was adjudicated and labeled a juvenile delinquent, I was a young black boy who was mistreated because of what I looked like, and assumptions were attached to me in my neighborhood. And so when we talk about neighborhoods, that entire neighborhoods that are labeled dangerous neighborhoods, that is in big part attached to police calls, which continues to feed the circle of heavily policed streets, heavily patrolled streets. And a heavily patrolled neighborhood, you're gonna have more encounters and more touches with law enforcement than neighborhoods that don't. So if or when you actually have an actual incident that will require law enforcement, there are 8 law enforcement interactions on your record, not 1. And so you look like somebody on paper who is supposed to be in the system. You then look like somebody who is supposed to be dealt with harshly and swiftly because you're a problem in the making. And so these things, these types of old choices that still exist in the 21st century, continue to feed on themselves until, you have an 18-year-old who messed up for the first time, but this young man has 21 incidents on his record. 10 come from school and the resource officers in school. Another couple come from the neighborhood. Another 2 come from the fact that they know somebody who was in trouble, because that shows up on your record as well. How do we unpack all of that? Man, it's absolutely a lot. I would say that, helping keeping people in homes is one thing. Having a real conversation that is a racially driven thing from the past that still shows up today is another. Helping people to become homeowners is a big deal. But helping to have a conversation that is open and honest, that my resources only afford me a certain amount of options. And so how do we create other community options to help people be all right? Like an actual food budget, like education or lack thereof. I learned a lot of young people who dropped out of school because they said school felt just like a juvenile detention center. And it felt like that because there were police present. And the police that they saw present, they felt picked on. When you couple that with the fact that somebody like myself who looks like me comes from a intergenerational traumatic experience here, a lot of what I know to expect from my neighborhood comes from what my dad experienced, which came from what his dad experienced, which came from what my grandmother experienced. Like when we having that intergenerational poverty, traumatic kind of conversation, then we're talking about unpacking a lot of different things at once, and the last thing that we can do is refuse to be honest about the fact that a lot of the neighborhoods that show up as dangerous neighborhoods in 2023 weren't labeled that for other reasons 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, because those same dangerous neighborhoods were red line neighborhoods a few decades before that. And before that, they were just neighborhoods that we keep black and brown people in because we don't want them maneuvering out of that space. Like, the labels may have changed, but the results of those labels continue and persist. And that is a reality that a lot of educated people know all too well and struggle with saying out loud. And I don't struggle with that because that's my experience. I also can appreciate that we can be a lot more than just that. I believe that this city can be, and I believe that it is. I just don't believe that it's enough yet. But that's why we need more people. I hope that answers your big question. Okay. Hello, Pastor Betty.
Uses for people who are arrested and in various institutions around the state, that the evaluations that are used are racially biased, right? Okay. There are also people that are looking at the algorithms that police departments use in order to police certain areas are also racially biased. Just like the algorithms that healthcare systems use are also racially biased. So when I was talking to one of the judges about one of the things that they have to pay attention to when they are putting sentences on people is that the state legislature has